An intense political debate broke out at a candlelight vigil on Sunday for the dead and wounded at the synagogue, where mourners argued whether it was a lack of gun control or a lack of political self-control that led to this terrorist attack. A 19-year-old nursing student who penned a virulently racist manifesto is accused of opening fire on the congregation the day before, killing a congregant who died when she stepped between the gunman and the rabbi, effectively taking a bullet for her spiritual leader. Authorities say they're investigating this as a hate crime. Hundreds gathered in Vale Verde Park, less than a mile from the attack, including Janeth Seidel, who came to the vigil to pay her respects and to question the absurdity of this senseless act. I knew Lori, that's the woman who stepped between the rabbi. Everybody knew her. She was just such a big volunteer, and if you were ever involved, if you ever came to the shul, you knew Lori. Seidel, who's not at the synagogue when Ernst opened fire, questioned yet why again anyone was allowed access to semi-automatic weapons. We need to license every gun, like a car. Well, we do. I don't know if you know that, but we do. If you want to carry one around, you have to have a license. Now, you can go out and buy a car without a license. You just can't use a car without a license. The same is true with guns, except we do a background check if you want to buy a gun. You don't have to have a background check if you have a car. So we go an extra step beyond the car. Dorina Fagan said, "Thank God we had a Jew with a gun," referring to the off-duty border agent who is credited with helping chase the gunman away. Thank God for a Jew with a gun. This guy happened to have recently discovered his Jewish roots and happened to be there. So it wasn't the rest of the media is reporting this as, look, he was an off-duty border agent. No, he was a congregant with a gun. How many people would have died if this guy didn't have a gun and wasn't at synagogue? This wasn't some just, bystander who was walking by. Here's a guy who was at the synagogue, saw the problem, had a gun, knew how to use it, and used it. If we wouldn't have had a guy in California who happened to be there, how many people would have died? Now they started to argue about whether this was Trump, whether this was guns. No, this was a sick individual. And I believe a sick individual that is being ramped up. People are being ramped up right now. And I believe on all sides. We can take our own responsibility for our own. But let's talk about the responsibility of the left on this. Because they always say that they blame it on us. Well, who was this white supremacist? Who was he? Was he a Trump supporter? Doesn't look like that. Was he a Jewish supporter? It doesn't look like that. So who was he? And let me ask the New York Times. The New York Times ran a picture internationally, a political cartoon last Thursday. It's one of the most obscene cartoons I have seen. It is straight out of a Nazi propaganda room. It's of Donald Trump wearing dark sunglasses as if he's blind. And the sight dog is a wiener dog with the face of Benjamin Netanyahu, and his tag is the Star of David. So it is showing that the Jews and Israel are leading the blind president. So what is that saying? That's saying that Israel is controlling our government. That's what that's saying. Now, I've heard that before. I've heard that when they were talking about AIPAC, that's the Jewish coalition. That's the Israeli coalition controlling our government. Who said that? Ilhan Omar has said that. AOC has echoed that. The New York Times puts a photo out, a cartoon out last Thursday. And what does the gunman say? The gunman says that the Jews and Israel are controlling our government. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Did you see anybody in the newspaper talk about that? Did you see anyone on cable news talk about that? Not in mainstream media. Of course they're not going to say, well, wait a minute. Isn't this the exact point that Ilhan Omar was making just recently about AIPAC? Hasn't this been the dialogue that the Jews are controlling the United States government? Isn't that exactly what that political cartoon was saying? Yes. So wait a minute. It's the gun, because the gun was just minding its own business, sitting in a safe or sitting on a shelf. It was just minding its own business. I don't know if you know this, but most guns don't have an opinion about Israel one way or another. Even the Uzi doesn't have an opinion on Israel one way or another.